So welcome, Tony, and thank you so much joining me today all the way from Melbourne, Australia. So it's good morning to you, your Monday morning, and it's good evening on Sunday for me here in the US. I'm really delighted to once again have a pharmacist, an expert to talk to for the benefit of undergraduate pharmacy students in Nigeria, especially University of Nigeria and Soka, where both of us, you and I, graduated many, many years ago. And the goal of this discussion, this interview, is to once again expose our young pharmacy undergraduates to an example of a pharmacist who was once where they are today, who is successfully practicing pharmacy outside Nigeria. A few weeks ago, I had the privilege of speaking to them. Last week, I interviewed a fellow pharmacist from the UK, and I think it's such a privilege that I know someone like you all the way in Australia. So thank you for joining me and welcome to this interview. The first thing I'd like you to do, Tony, is to share your background. So let us know what you do in Australia, and please don't be bashful, because I want these young students to be inspired by someone like you. So if you don't mind introducing yourself and giving us some background on what you do currently.
Okay, thank you, Ebere. As you said, we both graduated from UNN Pharmacy quite a long time ago. It's been a long journey, to be honest. So at the moment, I practice in a community setting in Australia. I'm actually a proprietor of my own pharmacy. I was in Australia, the first time we landed in Australia was 2007. So that's a long time now, I think it's 15 years. So first of all, as an overseas trained pharmacist, you have to go through their internship, regardless of how many years you've practiced outside. So we did that, and first of all, I worked in a place in New South Wales, another state from here. So worked for some company and then changed jobs and came down to this state. This state is called Victoria. Melbourne is the capital. So we live on the fringes of Melbourne, just maybe half an hour, 45 minutes drive from the Melbourne CBD in a place called Geelong. Geelong claims not to be part of Melbourne. They want to be seen to be seen in their own right as a separate city. So that's where we live. Pharmacy practice in Australia is, So pharmacy practice in Australia is not materially different from what you have everywhere else. The only thing is that in Australia, community pharmacies are not owned by corporations and big industry. It's owned by individual pharmacists. So if you're not a pharmacist, you don't have any right to own a pharmacy. You don't even have proprietary interest. You're not allowed. The laws do not allow you to have anything to do with pharmacy ownership. So it's basically being pharmacists who own and run community pharmacies. The other thing, but this is different from wholesale. Wholesale, anybody can be in wholesale. And with the pharmacy model in Australia, the government plays a very central role in the sense that they have what they call the pharmaceutical benefit scheme, which is essentially a public funded program whereby people get their medications at subsidized rates from community pharmacies. The government charges everyone some sort of tax. So you get issued with your cards, and then you can access pharmaceutical services from community pharmacies. Having said that, there's also hospital pharmacy, but the vast majority of pharmacists in Australia practice in the community setting. So that's the practice in a nutshell.
So you own your own pharmacy?
Yes,
essentially.
I do.
That's very impressive. So you have people working for you in your pharmacy?
Yes, I do. The thing is, when we came, people from our part of the world were very rare and very few. And we've been working for people, working for other pharmacists. But in the past couple of years or so, we Nigerian pharmacists have decided kind of to go into ownership, because, most of the people who actually own pharmacies are not even native Australians per se. Unfortunately, our people didn't come here early enough. We had Egyptians and Vietnamese. These are the people who actually, and Chinese, of course, who dominate pharmacy ownership. So we decided to give it a crack, and it hasn't been too bad. The other thing I need to say is that you practice in the big cities is actually very difficult to get into, because the capital outlay alone is enough to deter you, because you have to buy pharmacies, established pharmacies, or establish new ones. But there's what they call the location rules, which prohibits you from establishing a pharmacy within a 10-kilometer radius of an existing pharmacy. Unless, of course, there's a new development, like let's say you have a new mall and you have a doctor's practice with equivalent of 10 full-time doctor hours, which is almost impossible to meet in a new suburb. So those are the restrictions and the challenges you have. So what you do, you move out a little bit out of the city. There's what the government calls pharmacy incentive programs, which they give to pharmacists who are willing to move a little bit into the country. So you get that paid to you every month, just as an incentive to be able to retain staff outside. So that also is another factor. If you are willing to move out a little bit into the country, that helps.
Thank you. So in your assessment, is there still currently the opportunity for a graduate pharmacist from Nigeria to practice in Australia and perhaps someday be a proprietor of a pharmacy?
Oh, yes, definitely. As I said, the most important thing is if you are willing to live outside the main cities or practice outside the main cities. Because what I do is I do a bit of driving from here, like 2.5 hours away. So that's where my pharmacy is located, essentially. So what you can do, there are processes for getting into practice in Australia. It's a bit more simplified now, because initially when we came, as you might know, Australia has got 6 states and 2 territories, and each state had its own, they still do have their own laws and regulations regarding drugs and pharmacy. So, but it was very difficult. Like if you had to practice in New South Wales, for instance, you had to register, like let's say you had a local job to do there, you had to first register. So there were very confusing laws between states in terms of registration, but they've harmonized recently. They've harmonized the registration process, so it's now national. So once you're registered in Australia, you can practice in any state. The only thing is there are still some rules in their laws that are a little bit different. For instance, there's a friend of mine who is doing a local job now. He's a Nigerian, by the way, in a state called Tasmania. So he went there and he was telling me that for him to dispense certain categories of drugs, like the drugs of dependence, which we call S8, that is Schedule 8, he's had to, once you dispense it, the system automatically alerts the health department and they will give you a call and say, my friend, why are you dispensing that? You're not supposed to dispense that because that doctor is not from the state. So it's a small state, so they can monitor these things in real time. But so essentially there are, a few rules and regulations that are still different. But in general terms, once you get registered in Australia now, you are nationally registered. So that's a hurdle that's been, cleared for pharmacists. If you want me to go through maybe there'll be time for that. What steps somebody from Nigeria can take to get here.
Please go through them. This is a good point to do that because I'm sure our target audience is very interested in those steps. So please go ahead.
Okay. The first step is the English test. For some reason, the Australians like the International English Language Testing System, the IELTS. We did ours many, many years ago. I did mine in Johannesburg, South Africa, when I was still in Southern Africa. And then the next step will be the CAPS, KAPS, which is Knowledge Assessment of Pharmaceutical Sciences. So in those days, it was called stage one exam, which essentially tests you on, the pharmacy we do, like pharmaceutics, pharmaceutical microbiology, pharmaceutical chemistry, just that basic pharmaceutical sciences. So when we did them, it was stage one. You had paper 1 and paper 2, which you did over 2 days. But at the moment, it's now called CAPS, KAPS, as I said. These steps are actually in the website. It's called pharmacycouncil.org.au. So more details can be found there. But as I said, once you've done the IELTS, then you do the CAPS. The CAPS are done in certain countries. Unfortunately, Nigeria is still not one of the centers. So that's an additional challenge. I do know that they used to do it in Ghana for the West African sub-region, and I think Kenya, and of course, South Africa. So I know people have gone to those places to, write those exams, the CAPS. Yeah, but of course, IELTS is done in Nigeria. So I always advise people to do the IELTS first before you do anything, because you need to get 7 out of 9 in all the components of IELTS to be considered for pharmacy registration. Unfortunately, that's the situation. It's not easy as an exam, but it's doable. Some of us did it, so we were trained in Nigeria. So it's not. We have quite a few Nigerian pharmacists here practicing. So and all of us were educated in Nigeria. Yeah. So that's the situation in a nutshell. So it's a challenge, but it's not really an impossible thing. The other problem.
So after the CAPS, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
After you've done the CAPS, are you now registered?
No. Once you've done the CAPS, what you do, you now apply to the immigration department for migration. And in most cases, they will give you a permanent visa even before you come. So like some of us got our permanent resident visa before we left to come to Australia. So once you get that sorted, what the knowledge tells them is that, oh, this guy is actually a pharmacist. This guy actually studied pharmacy, because they don't believe that you actually do know anything. But once you pass that exam, you're now considered a pharmacy graduate. So you've actually done pharmacy. So that then after that, you apply for their visa. And then when you come in, you do the internship, and then you do the final registration exam in Australia.
Getting a place for internship, is it automatic? Is it difficult?
It is challenging. It is very, very hard, especially for overseas trained, because, as I said, the people who own pharmacies here are individuals, basically. Although of recent we have changed now, like people, a group of people would band together and have, many pharmacies. Okay, just to point that out, in general, you cannot have interest in more than 5 pharmacies as an individual. 5 pharmacies is a max you can get. In practice, there are some exceptions, but that's generally what people are restricted to do. Getting an internship position has always been a challenge. But now that we have Nigerians owning pharmacies, we are hoping that we'll be able to change that narrative for them. Yeah, because I was discussing with one of my colleagues in Nigeria. We were thinking along that line, how can we help guys if they manage to come here, Because getting the internship is, to be honest, one of the reasons why it is like that also is that most of the graduates will be working in pharmacies as students. So they already have that edge over guys who are coming from abroad. So as an example, let's say you're studying pharmacy here. You'll be going to do your weekend jobs and stuff in pharmacies around here. So when it comes to getting an intern in their pharmacy, they will give priority to that person they know who has been working for them anyway, and they will just give them the internship position. So that's the main reason. But the other thing is also that some of them are not sure of these overseas trained people. But you cannot prove yourself unless you're given an opportunity. So it's always a difficult problem. Yeah.
So as a proprietor, if you were looking to hire an intern or even a pharmacist trained in Nigeria, can you describe what criteria you'll be looking at for?
A good knowledge of IT skills is good now, because most of the things we do are computer-based anyway. Scripts, they call prescription scripts here. The prescriptions are now, most of them now coming up as e-scripts, electronic scripts, which they send to your phone. So you just walk into the pharmacy and scan the QR codes and, So, I mean, somebody who doesn't have those skills struggle to fit in. So if they need to come here, they will have to update their IT skills and be, So but it's not hard. It's not hard to learn, to be honest. It's not, the computer systems here are very easy to, to adjust into. I did it. So, and by the time we came, by the time we trained, all these computer things were not there. But it's easy to learn. But one of the things I learned in Botswana was IT. When we were in Botswana, it was the time they were introducing those things. So it really helped us, prepared us for life in Australia.
You've referenced Botswana. You also referenced Southern Africa, which I know Botswana is in Southern Africa.
Yeah.
Do you mind, just out of interest, tracing a little bit how you went? So it sounds like your path was, after we graduated, you worked in Nigeria, I suppose, and then you went to Southern Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Okay, good. Thank you. After our graduation, I did my youth service in old Kwara State. When I came back, I joined the Colliery Hospital in Enugu, owned by the Coal Corporation. They had a hospital there. After, I think, 4.5 years, I left and joined the Enugu State Service. The Enugu State Service, I had to serve in many hospitals, notably Ijinike and Udi. I was at Udi General Hospital up to 2002 when I left to go to Botswana. We had this, it was a government-to-government program. It wasn't the TAC. People ask me, did you go through TAC? No, it wasn't TAC. It was something different. It was something else. So we did that, and I was deployed to a hospital. Yes, I think it's their second biggest hospital, a tertiary hospital. And I even had the privilege to act as the head of the department on occasion when the pharmacist there was transferred. So it was an interesting thing because Botswana at that time was way ahead of Nigeria in terms of practice. And one interesting thing about them was that medical and everything services was free of charge. Botswana. So drugs were free and the drugs were available. You will not believe it. Drugs were available. Advanced drugs that we didn't even know about, they would give it to them. So practicing in Botswana was quite interesting. As I said, they introduced computers and started automating their services while we were still there. But I had to leave because, you need to, unfortunately, we were never settled in Botswana because we were always given the impression that we were living on borrowed time, Excuse me.
As foreigners?
As foreigners, yes, because, they had this notion that they will eventually feel everywhere with their people. Unfortunately, the way they were going about it wasn't very pleasant. So we were given 3-year contracts. So the first 3 years ended in 2005, and then it was renewed up to another 3 years, which would have been 2008. But I resigned in early 2007 when I got my PR visa to come to Australia. Yeah. Botswana was good. It was good practice. Everything was going smoothly, but that's just it.
It's really admirable that you were not reluctant to explore a career outside Nigeria, first in Southern Africa, now in Australia. What have been some of the challenges and also the opportunities. So what would you say to a pharmacy undergraduate or soon-to-be graduate who is considering Australia? What are the advantages and disadvantages? And why did you choose to make a life, a successful one at that, in Australia?
Well, I will, in Nigeria, of course, you know that, we've always looked up to Europe and America in terms of migration and practice and all that. But in Southern Africa, I had the opportunity to interact with, there was one of the Botswana pharmacists who, because believe it or not, their education is free of charge as well. So this guy was one of my colleagues in the hospital. As I told you, we had a big hospital, the second biggest. So he told me that he's been asked by the chief pharmacist to explore opportunities to go and do his postgraduate studies. So he found, and the man and the chief pharmacist told him it's either UK or Australia.
Sorry, for a second, I didn't catch what you said. He told you that he's been asked by his chief pharmacist to do what?
Yeah, he wanted to do postgraduate studies. He himself wanted to do postgraduate studies. And the chief pharmacist now said, okay, go and see if you can find a place, like admission. So he ended up finding a place in Australia. So when he got to Australia, while he was there, he called me one day and said, I'm in Australia now, and this is what is happening. So, because, I used to get along with him very well. And then even when his wife visited him, his wife just came and he called me and said his wife just arrived and they were going to do a party for her and that she's feeling very jet lagged and all that because it's a long flight. Anyway, so after he came back, after he finished, he came back and I used to, ask him, how's life there? He said, oh, that place is good practice and all that. So and incidentally, the chief pharmacist graduated from Nigeria. The chief pharmacist, the Botswana chief pharmacist, is a graduate of Ife. So he had a soft spot for Nigerian pharmacists. So anytime we came there, it was very nice. He was a very good guy. The only thing is that he didn't have the powers to do more than he was doing because it was a kind of national policy against foreign pharmacists. But he was always very sympathetic to our group. Yeah, because we went there, we had 5 pharmacists in our group and 10 doctors when we traveled out. So we're always that little group. Yeah, so that my friend, that Botswana pharmacist was actually the one who kind of nudged me in the direction of coming to Australia, And there was also another guy, a pharmacist, who was from Anambra anyway, but he didn't go to Australia as a pharmacist. He just went there as one of those migrants. So unfortunately, he hadn't his papers. So he had to come back because he was told that for him to register, he has to do it properly. So you can't start your CAPS and, having been an illegal immigrant. So they said the best thing is to go home and do it through the proper channel. And Australia has this policy of you having to be excluded. Let's say if you leave Australia today and you overstayed, you'll be excluded for 3 years. So it was after his 3 years expired. Anyway, he came back to Botswana. He came to Botswana. And so he was telling me about life in Australia as well, and told me that he has actually come back to start the process properly. So those are the things that made us.
That's really, that's very encouraging. First of all, that there is an established channel, and if you follow the right steps, there is an opportunity. So that's that should be encouraging to anyone who is looking at practice of pharmacy outside Nigeria. And I'm really delighted, because you're right. Oftentimes we restrict our thinking to Western Europe and North America. But clearly, Australia is a fantastic opportunity, and a place where a pharmacist, a qualified pharmacist, can actualize their career. So I'm really pleased with the expertise you've shared. Do you have any advice you can give those young students that will be watching this video? So looking back on your career, what guidance or advice would you have for them?
Okay. The first thing I would say is that Australia requires patience. You see, the problem with our young people these days is that they are not patient enough. It's when you come here, you experience a culture shock, because the things we do in Nigeria are quite different from the way they do things here. I'll give you one example. When we got to Botswana, for instance, let me start with Botswana. Sorry, I keep talking about Botswana. When we got to Botswana, in that hospital, everybody will follow the order. You have to join the queue, at the pharmacy, for instance. There was no issue of jumping the queue. It was something that, it's something that we found a little bit strange, because even our staff, you see them, even the doctors will be waiting in the line. That was at the pharmacy. So there are so many things you need to imbibe, if you really want to make it in Australia. Okay. Patience is very important. Very, very important. Somebody said that Australia is a leveler. So it just brings you to that level, The Middle Eastern countries, you have a lot of them here as pharmacists. And if those guys can actually do it, I don't see why Nigerians cannot. Many of them, you struggle to even understand their English. Indians and, but they're here, plenty of them. And our people are trained in English right from kindergarten, So even because when you come, you will have to meet with the board. They will do a bit of interview as well. But I mean, I wouldn't worry about those ones, because those ones will be explained, if somebody manages to get here. So it's a long journey. It's not a sprint. So it's something that you do slowly, step by step. And what I've told people is that Australia is such an organized society that even if you don't get into pharmacy, having come here with your visa, you are free to do anything else you want. So, because the area of practice in Australia is changing as well. There are new areas of practice. There are a lot of what they call pharmacy professional programs, like meds check, vaccinations and stuff. We do vaccinations, especially then this COVID thing. It used to be just the flu vax, but now with the COVID vaccinations, pharmacists have played a very big role in vaccinations, the control of COVID. So we also do a bit of certification and witnessing of documents. So pharmacy is actually multifaceted in this place, especially community pharmacy. You do a lot of things. Some groups decide to issue medical certificates. You can issue medical certificate for 48 hours to cover someone. So it's challenging, but it's doable. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Tony. So
No problem.
just want to acknowledge once again, pharmacist Tony Ozoani, who is actually not just a community pharmacist, but a proprietor of community pharmacy in Australia. Tony, this has been awesome. I'm delighted that you and I are able to have this discussion because I know how much it will benefit UNN alma mater students. They've already given me feedback that this is a relevant topic and I can't wait to share this video with them. The final thing, I just want to ask for your commitment that if there are any questions after they've watched this video, that I will be able to come back to you with questions and maybe continued mentoring of students who are interested in following the path you have successfully paved.
Yeah, that's fine. Anytime you need anything, just let me know. It's fine. The only challenge might be the time difference. Yeah, we can always work out a time suitable to all of us. Yeah.
Well, with your flexibility, we were able to do it. So I look forward to whenever we need to, we can make it work. So I really appreciate it.
Not a problem at all. I'm happy. I'm grateful for that.
Thank you.
No